Hello, my name's Claire Hill and I'm a supporter of the Royal Humane Society. I'm delighted today to be able to share with you a story of great bravery that dates back to the year 1821. That was a year, it was Georgian times. It was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It was a time when women were very much mothers, they were wives, they were homemakers, they were supporters in society. They worked, but they couldn't own land, and they certainly couldn't vote. So actually in this context, I'm delighted to share this story of a very strong woman, Catherine Blamire, who, with unceasing care, saved the life of someone using the directions that she found in the Royal Society manual. So let me begin. On the morning of the 3rd of December 1821, during very tempestuous weather, a boat belonging to the industry, tender to His Majesty's Services 7, was coming to shore, with 14 men aboard at 8 o'clock, when on a sudden she seemed to upset, and every man was consigned to the mercy of the raging element. Mrs. Blamire had been anxiously watching the boat from her cottage window, and her eyes were fixed upon the spot at the very juncture of this awful disappearance. Her feelings at this moment may be conceived rather than expressed. Immediately, upon an impulse sudden and as it were involuntary, she rushed to the beach, with some vague notion of giving relief, but neither boat nor crew were to be seen. Her maid, who had followed her, seeing her extreme agitation and knowing the bad state of her health, entreated her return and supported her back to her cottage. At that moment, her daughter, 11 years of age, as understanding what was the matter, exclaimed on a sudden thought, "Mamma, we have got a book that will tell us what to do," immediately brought from among her playthings the manual of the Royal Humane Society. Mrs. Blamire, with the auspicious document in her hand, and re-inspired by better hopes, repaired quickly to the shore, where the crowd had just dragged the body of an old man out of the water, and had turned him with his face downwards and his head on the declivity of the beach, without the smallest signs of life. On occasions like this, there are many advisers, and most difficult it is to command attention to that which is right. Some were for holding him up by the heels to evacuate the water he had swallowed. Others were for rolling the unfortunate man about, but the prevailing sentiment appeared to be that all measures were useless. Mrs. Blamire, however, with no other guide but the printed regulations, aided indeed by her own extraordinary and admirable presence of mind, directed the body to be laid on the back with the head upon the rise of the beach, and while the cry of "Carry him to the nearest house" was heard, and nobody seemed willing to receive so hopeless a case, this benevolent lady, animated by better feelings, ordered them to carry him, the unfortunate object of her solicitude, to her own cottage, and sending forward her maid to make up speedily a good fire, to heat water, to warm blankets, pillows, etc., she accompanied the body herself to see that the men conveyed it carefully, with the face upwards and the head and shoulders elevated. As she expressed herself afterwards, God gave her strength of mind to second the first impulse and get on with it. On their arrival, she directed the body to be laid before a good fire which is in readiness, and to be immediately stripped. Finding the assistants tardy and awkward in their endeavours, she seized a knife and saved much precious time by cutting the wet clothes from his back, with an expedition which none of the rude crowd about her could have accomplished. She had him rubbed quite dry with warm flannels, not disdaining to assist, but solicitously active in effecting and procuring everything which humanity and the urgency of the occasion required. He was then laid upon her direction in a warm bed, with his head and shoulders supported by pillows, a bed in which one of her children, who was ill, had just been seen about to enter. What will zeal and the warmth of humanity effect? By this time, a sort of mob was collected in the house, crowding into the room to the great detriment of the salutary process which was intended. Half of these were idly staring at what was going forward, and the remainder hindering rather than assisting by their despairing manner. To correct this great evil, Mrs. Blamire got upon a chair in the midst of them and read aloud the short directions of the society, and by the most urgent entreaties and the most powerful language she could command, at length thinned the room. She applied bottles of hot water to various parts of the body as directed, and while these operations were going on, the little girl, who had thought of the manual, hearing that her mother needed more bottles, etc., ran from house to house, though a stranger to the neighbourhood, to procure some water, till so much exhausted with unaccustomed fatigue and agitation of spirits, she fainted away. To keep the beneficial effect of warmth, Mrs. Blamire had the bottles of hot water constantly renewed and applied the warming pan to the chest, back, etc. She wiped away the mucus which filled and frothed over his mouth and cleaned the inside of it, that returning respiration, if respiration should return, might not be impeded, and all these things she did with a quickness, a strength of body, a presence and clearness of mind, which are possessed by very few under any circumstances, and which, as she said afterwards, seemed to be given to her for the occasion, and which justly bred admiration in those who witnessed them. It might be supposed that half an hour's unremitted exertions, without the smallest signs of returning life, would have wholly banished hope, and slackened further endeavours. It was not so with this lady. The frequent exclamations of some about her that the man had no life in him, it was useless to try any further, accompanied by all those interjections which break the energy, resolution, and perseverance of 9 people out of 10, had no effect on Mrs. Blamire. She still persevered, using the same means and encouraging others to assist with unceasing care. And in about an hour after the time he was brought into the house, signs of life made their appearance. For 4 hours afterwards, he slowly and gradually recovered under her kind and unceasing care. Warm gruel, broth, and a little weak brandy and water were now given to him from time to time, while the remedies first used were still continued. She watched as a mother over the charge thus by Providence committed to her care, and at the end of 5 hours from the time he was brought to the house, he was able to be conveyed with safety to the hospital. Another body was thrown on the shore about the same time and near the same spot, but did not meet the same humane care. It lay on the beach for some little time and was then taken to a public coach office. A medical gentleman who attended found him lying there with his face upon the ground. He had his position altered, and the body, by his direction, was removed to a warm bath. Life, however, did not again return. It is to be remarked that he was a very hale man, and Mrs. Blamire's patient was an old and very infirm man, and had for a fortnight been labouring under a severe cough. James Badenoch, Esquire, of the Foreign Office, was an eyewitness of Mrs. Blamire's humane and great exertions, and to this gentleman the Society is indebted for the most important particulars of this unprecedented and extraordinary case, which, as drawn up by herself at his request, is too modestly expressed to convey a just deed of its merit. Her motive, says the gentleman, for making it known through the medium of the Society is to shew that under circumstances of an apparently dead body having been got on shore, even a woman may, by attending to the directions of the Society and doing her best, be the means of preserving to a fellow being that existence which God alone can give. She earnestly wishes it to be an example to others, and she gives her name because, in the opinion of the Society, the cause of humanity cannot be so well answered without it. The thanks of the Society are also due to Vice Admiral Holland, Captain McCullough, RN, and Lieutenant Dixon, RN, for their communication upon this subject. And having heard this wonderful tale, I would like to thank you for listening to the story. It is one of many thousands that is held on the register of the Royal Humane Society. Right now, we are in the Royal Humane Society is entering its 250th year, and we are encouraging people to become one of our governors. For just £100 in 2024, you will be invited to attend a variety of society events, such as the annual General Court, where you'll see the awardees receiving their awards and hear their wonderful stories of bravery in our modern time. You'll also get a 250th anniversary certificate and a wonderful invitation to a special celebration at St. Paul's Cathedral in September. If you'd like to find out more about the Society and its work, please visit our website. Thank you so much for your support, for supporting us in any way you can, most particularly in this 250th year.